Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk to you about why I think the Grau assault rifle should be nerfed in Warzone, and the gameplay that we're going to open up with isn't Grau gameplay, it's my darkest hour and my finest moment with the Burst M4 escaping the Gulag, and I'm about to come back and just be a fresh Gulag boy, pick up a Burst M4 and get a team wipe that I didn't even think was possible. But back to the main topic, I think that Infinity Ward should nerf the Grau in Warzone. It really is the dominant sniper weapon in that mode. Above all, I called it a sniper weapon. Geez, you can see where I am. I'm not even like, I'm just kind of talking from the heart from this one. This one isn't scripted. It's the dominant weapon, and it kills snipers too, but it's dominant above everything else. The M4, the Ram, the CR56, the Odin, they can't really compete with the Grau in the assault rifle category. Sniper rifles struggle to compete with it in a lot of ways. The MP5, the AUG, all of that isn't really as good as a Grau. And the Grau causes my games to be both more boring and sweatier than normal at the same time somehow. You would think sweatier would be the opposite of boring, but when it's the same thing over and over again, it's pretty boring. Statistically speaking, the Grau doesn't kill the fastest by any means. It's pretty much middle of the pack. It also doesn't have the best damage per shot or the best damage over range. It doesn't have a particularly big magazine or a special headshot multiplier or anything like that. But when you put the Archangel barrel on this gun, which is about the only one anybody uses, it turns into an absolute monster. The recoil goes down to being almost nothing, extraordinarily easy to control, and literally nothing when you mount the weapon. The iron sights on that barrel too are honestly just as good, if not better, than most red dot sights, and the 5.56 ballistic profile on this weapon means that it has very little drop and very fast projectiles up to about 300 meters, so you very rarely need to lead your shots or do anything creative like that. And the problem with the Grau really is more with the Archangel barrel, is that the Grau plus the Archangel is just too easy to use. It takes almost no skill to use it full auto, unmounted, and just beam people at like 200 meters out. If you scan over a person with that barrel while you're holding down right trigger on your controller, you're pretty much guaranteed to get 3 free hits. And the problem, this is frustrating because it's a powerful weapon, right? But this problem is compounded in trios and squads where there are whole teams using this. Snipers are less popular now in Warzone because 2 guys with a Grau can do the same job better. I would rather go up against a guy with a sniper rifle than I would 2 people just a little bit apart with the Grau just beaming me with bullets at like 300 meters away at multiple angles, constant pressure, no ability to escape. The Grau is scarier, and honestly, I don't even snipe as much anymore when I can just use my Grau to counter snipe people and pick them off buildings and stuff like that, which is just crazy. And it just overall gives every team a lot of extra lethality with almost no downsides. The only thing you could say is a downside to the Grau is that it doesn't have the greatest close quarters combat time to kill. It's not super fast like the Ram 7 or MP5 or AUG or anything like that, and it's behind the M4 as well. But it's still kind of average in close quarters combat. It's still kind of middle of the pack, and it's also still very easy to use in close quarters combat, so it's not what I would call a downside as much as an average side. So with the Grau, the worst it gets is average, you know? When you have a weapon like that in a game, it greatly lowers the skill gap and allows for bad or mediocre players to feel like top 1%ers on 2 different sides. Number one, they'll feel really accomplished and talented that they're hitting people, and I guess that, as the famous quote from Joe Seacott goes around, might have been the goal of skill-based matchmaking all along. But on the other side of this, I also can't accurately judge the skill level of my enemies because they all seem the same, because the Grau is so incredibly easy to use that bad players and good players can aim it almost the same in terms of effectiveness and range and that sort of stuff. So previously, when a team would start shooting at me, I would mentally kind of keep track of how much they're missing and how they're aiming and how aggressive they're playing and stuff like that. And I'd have a pretty good gauge on if they were sweats, if it was a normal team, if it was a bad team. But since the meta is now everybody have a Grau all the time, and the Grau is super accurate even in the hands of an absolute noob, I really can't tell if I'm fighting noobs or fighting awesome guys, and I misjudge combat all the time and I get murdered because they seem the same. This effect means that for me, Warzone is less fun to play. It causes less variety in engagements because it's Grau warfare right now, a difficulty in gauging enemy strength, which causes poor decisions on my part, and you always feel like you're getting lasered by tiny dots in the distance. This is something I noticed with Warzone that has been getting worse over time, is that I am unable to bob and weave. I've got 250 health. A weapon like this takes something like 10 shots to kill me. So I would think if I need to move a couple of feet and go from this rock to that rock, if I just want to peek very briefly and try to get a snipe in, that it should be fine. Yeah, I might take a hit or two, but I should just be able to pop in and pop out and be fine and get some vision, because they're so far away they shouldn't be able to shoot me, and if they do hit me, it'll be tickling damage. But with the Grau, the distance doesn't matter, and you'll get 4 or 5 shots in, and if you peek people, even with a sniper or whatever, you just get beamed at a distance. You just constantly feel like you're going up against hackers, and everybody accuses each other of cheating or hacking or aimbotting or whatever, just because the Grau is like super easy to use. There aren't many weapons that compete with the Grau either. The M4A1 has a better time to kill, yes, but it's not nearly as good at range because of the recoil, and the iron sights are significantly worse. The Ram 7 has a fantastic time to kill, but the recoil is just kind of miserable. That's more of a medium range weapon, or I kind of like a late game weapon. The CR56, I think, is actually its closest competitor, but it still can't compete with the Grau in terms of long range accuracy. Even if you're mounted, it's not as good as just a Grau standing up. The Odin is really interesting in a lot of different ways, but it's not as good because it shoots a little slowly, it kicks a little butt, it handles. And then you've got the DMRs. The FAL and the CR56 have better range, better accuracy, and better a lot of things than the Grau, but those are semi-automatic. You have to really think about those. You have to be more precise with your shots. The Grau, you can just hold down the trigger and spray and it's fine. And even the AUG is, it's an interesting weapon. You can kit it almost into an LMG, but it's probably best up close as an SMG. And all of the weapons that I mentioned have significant trade-offs. Something about these weapons is a trade-off. It's either, high damage, low range, long range, low damage, or some handling or some difficulty or skill that you would have to master, whereas the Grau really just kind of doesn't have this at all. And normally, in terms of like game balance, and when I make a video about something like this, I would prefer to buff other weapons to pick them up to the standard of whatever is good, instead of just nerfing everything into the ground. And I know we did ask for M4 nerfs earlier this season. Well, the M4 was quite strong because of its recoil. It's in a better place now. However, in this instance, I again think that the Grau is the one that needs to be moved down, and not so much the other ones need to be moved up. Because ideally, in what my opinion of good game balance is, if you want to have high potential weapons, if you want to have a weapon that really can beam people at long ranges, that can do incredible damage, that can be an all-around very awesome, versatile kind of weapon, they have to have some sort of downside. They have to have some sort of skill to master, something that's hard, at least in some aspect. For compared to the other weapons, the CR56, the hard thing is its recoil. The Odin is that the recoil is a little bit funny and it handles really slow. You have to set up with it. The FAL is semi-automatic, which is a whole special skill unto itself. And the M4A1 has a great time to kill, but it kind of struggles with horizontal recoil, so it's difficult to use at range. I couldn't say any of that about the Grau. It's just awesome all around. There's no skills to master. You just pick it up and you're good to go. So if in Warzone people are going to laser me at long range, it should be because they're really good players and or they have mastered their weapon. Because then when I get lasered, I know that I've gone up against somebody good. I know this team is serious. They earned it because I've used the same weapon myself. I know how to fight it. I know how to challenge it. But with the Grau, you could just put it in a bad person's hands and they're laser beaming you, and there's not much you can do about it. I have a few suggested fixes for the Grau. Most of them center around the Archangel barrel, because that's really the only one that is problematic on this weapon. And I think that you could have less recoil reduction on the Archangel barrel. It just almost doesn't kick. It could kick some. It could be less stable. It could have more, horizontal wobbles, something like that. You could also do a little bit less damage range on the barrel, which I don't think would be as helpful as the recoil, because a lot of times when they're shooting you at what I would say long range, it's still going to be the minimum damage range on the weapon, but it would make the medium range fights with the Grau more manageable. However, my personal favorite fix, the one that I think that would be best, I think the community might lose their minds over this one though, is to redo the model on the iron sights of the Archangel barrel to give it a worse iron sight. That way, if people want to make this really optimal weapon, they have to sacrifice an attachment slot just to make sure they put some optics on it that work. And I think that would overall shift the meta around a little bit. It's just my personal favorite one. I think it could be fun. And, you know, there are other people that believe other weapons should be buffed. So if I were going to make weapons or buff them to compete with the Grau or have good alternatives, I would say the M4A1 could use a damage range increase, at least in Warzone. The recoil is okay, the time to kill and rate of fire is okay, it's in a good spot balance-wise. But if you gave the M4A1 a range increase, then it could potentially compete better with the Grau. The CR56 with the base 7.62 ammo could probably use a very slight recoil decrease. Right now it still kicks a little bit much even with the Zodiac barrel, and at longer ranges it's harder to use if you're not mounted, but with a recoil decrease it could be more competitive with the Grau. And I think that if you want to talk about in terms of assault rifles, the AUG with the 5.56 conversion and the longer barrel could use a few like aiming stability improvements or recoil reductions, and then it could also potentially be more competitive with the Grau. Probably not at long range, but it would be a much better close range alternative. Guys, that is all for this video. I don't normally put my opinions on balancing out here quite like this, but recently I've become very frustrated with just getting killed by the Grau over and over and over again, and I hope that it gets a nerf or something else gets a buff or something gets changed soon, because it's making Warzone unfun to play for me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.